Birkett here, along with Carlos Monarrez, and Carlos coming in from behind the camera as always.
Like a ninja day.
Always tardy for the party, Carlos. That's for my wife.
Fashionable.
Watch that show. Tardy for the party, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, the guy, the former NFL player,
yeah.
Cole. What's his name?
Nah, I don't know.
I had never even heard of it until I saw some random. I think it was when they were doing the Falcons Hard Knocks, and I was like, oh, really?
True story. At the when the Lions worked him out, they brought him into town, worked out. That was the first time my wife ever was like, whoa, what's, like, I'm interested in football. Like, are they going to sign this guy? And they didn't. But anyway, so I ran into his agent in Indianapolis, and I mentioned something to him.
That's an interesting name. Cole.
Just talk. I'll look it up.
Talk.
No, we're talking about the draft. We're not talking about tardy for the party today. And Bob Quinn held his annual pre-draft news conference. And, yeah, you know, look. Fourth annual. The one thing he said today, he talked a lot about trades again today, right? They're not going to trade up. They don't have the ammo to go up and get one of those top 3 players in the draft. He wants to trade back. He said this a couple times now, and look, I think he's been very open about it. And I asked him, I said, Bob, why are you telling us all this, right? I mean, this is the season of the smokescreen. And so I wanted to know why Bob was being so forthright about wanting to move down and not wanting to go up.
By the way, just as a quick thing, it was like a kid asking his dad, why do you keep driving our pets out to the farm? And like, he had what do you mean? Like, he was not prepared. Dave's checkmate. Go ahead. So you asked him.
Yeah, should I lie to you? No, I mean, like, no, we don't want you to lie. But I was just kind of curious. Like, what the motives were. Like,
absolutely.
Is this drum up support? Is there, are you trying to warn fans? Are you really trying to go up? What's the purpose? And he didn't really have an answer. So I want to ask you, Carlos, before, why? You explain it to me. Why?
Because I wrote about this. I'm writing about this in the
Freep.com.
Freep.com is going to be up soon. I gave Dave full credit, and that the only reason that he would be so publicly open about his desire to trade down is because it is a smokescreen, because he probably wants to do the opposite. I don't think he does want to trade down.
Really?
Yeah, because he even admitted.
I think he does.
Well, like, it wouldn't kill him. I think if someone's throwing first rounders at him, like, yeah, but at 8, I don't see it happening. And I think he might, I think he has his idea of maybe who he wants at 8. But he just wants to throw people off. Hey, come, give me some offers. Now, I don't know if he's truthful or not about this, but he did say, to answer your question, he said, it hasn't made a difference in how many calls I've gotten.
Yeah, his phone's busy anyways.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. I mean, it's only the Patriots and probably the Giants that he's talking to anyway. So, but yeah, it was. I don't really think he does. I think he might have his guy.
No, well, I think he knows who he wants, right? And I think if that guy was there at 8, he would take him. But I don't think that guy's going to be there. I mean, I think, as he looks at the board, even though he said today there's going to be 1 or 2 quarterbacks that he expects to go in the top 7 picks, I think as he looks at, that group of players that might be available to him, or that group of players that'll go in the first 7 picks, he has his guy that he wants, right? Maybe it's Josh Allen, who's, not going to get to 8, or Quinnen Williams not going to get to 8. But, beyond that, maybe it's a Devin White, or maybe it's an Ed Oliver, right? Maybe he that's the guy that he likes. And just deep down inside, I think he's like, that guy's not going to be there. So I'm just preparing everybody that I'm going to move down. I mean, we talked about this a little bit in the back room, that there are times when, I think NFL people, general managers, Bob Quinn, sort of warn you a little bit ahead of time. They don't tell you exactly what's going on, but they sort of. And we talked about the Matt Patricia thing, right? When the Lions fired Jim Caldwell, before they hired Matt Patricia, and before they embarked on that coaching search, when Bob Quinn
Come on, that was a sham. We all knew it was going to be Patricia.
We did, but when Bob Quinn said, look, there's coaches come in all different styles and shapes and sizes, and he was sort of preparing you a little bit, like, hey, this is the guy that we're going to get, right? And I think we've seen him do that at other times as well. That maybe it's just a warning or a little clue that maybe we could go in a direction about something. And I think that's what this is.
Well, okay, I'm going to talk to the people here to be real with them. This is a little bit of the sausage making here, and we discussed this in the back room. And this is, I wrote about it too. This is Bob Quinn laying down a little bit of the built-in explanation, justification because sports writers like to have stuff ready to go of when something happens. It's kind of weird. They pick an undersized defensive lineman or a tweener offensive tackle or something. Yes, Bob Quinn laid down the groundwork for all the kind of strange things he may do if he trades down, and it's like, wait, you traded a Nathan, and he talked about not following the little trade value chart that someone wrote about, and you don't always, it's not a rule. So he's already set up all these things in the sports writers' minds, justifications, explanations for all the weird things
for whatever
he's going to do.
Scenario could
yes,
happen.
So that when he does weird things, when he does something weird, some sports writers are going to say, oh, well, that makes sense because Bob already talked about it. It's like if I said, you know what, I might sell my house for $1, you know, who knows?
No,
it still doesn't make it a good idea.
Carlos, we're on the same page on this. Like, I think that's one of the scenarios that he laid out. The other things he mentioned today, hey, you know, there's a lot of good players in this class that maybe are undersized or don't fit the typical, don't check off some of the boxes that you want, right? Ed Oliver, he's got shorter arms than usual. Devin White, maybe he's not as big as a linebacker typically is in this system. Or, so I think he did. I think he set up all those scenarios. But I think the draft trade down, and maybe it's for less than the trade value chart. Right. Because, again, to Bob, if that guy is not there, let's say it's Ed Oliver, just for sake of discussion. If that guy is not there at 8, then to him, that next group of 10 or 12 players are all equal. And, well, if I take a cornerback that I want – that I would normally take at number 8, DeAndre Baker, but he doesn't make sense at number 8, and I can get an extra third-round pick, even if that's not fair value according to the chart, to move down 5 spots, and I still get my guy. Well, that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Come back to that, by the way, Thursday night when that happens.
Thursday night, yeah, exactly. So let me ask you, Thursday night, when that happens, would you be?
Man, this guy, he was right.
Would you be as willing to criticize him for not getting the fair trade value according to the chart as you would now that he said, I may not get the same trade value because it's not a rule? Are you going to give him more of a break? Are you going to hold him accountable for not getting the value he should have gotten?
I think there's yes, I think he needs to get the value, but let me say this too, right? Here's the wild
card. You can feel him melting now. You can feel him softening.
This is what we're never going to know.
It's like butter. Oh, nice. Okay.
Is that guy that their Lions are going to say, yeah, we would have taken him at 8. That was the guy that we wanted all along, that every team says on draft day. Is that really how they felt? Well, who knows, right? I mean, so if they take DeAndre Baker, this cornerback that didn't test well, but is a good player, played in the SEC, checks off a lot of the boxes, but not all of them athletically, and they take him at 15, and, was that really the guy they were going to take at 8? Well, it wouldn't be the guy that I would take at 8, So, I think they need to get fair value for it. But we've seen in the past the Oakland Raiders when they drafted DJ Hayden years ago, where you don't always get what the trade value chart says. And when you're moving up to get a quarterback, teams are paying a premium for that. So I don't know that there's a quarterback in this draft that teams are paying a premium to go up and get, even if Kyler Murray or Dwayne Haskins is there. If one of those guys is there, if Murray is there in particular, I think that's when the Lions do get trade value chart value or more.
And Bob Quinn said, well,
so I didn't answer your question.
Well, I think you need to. I think it's fine for them to have their point of view of what's value to us, the guys that fit, the guys that may not be the ideal prototypes, all this stuff, and that's fine. I mean, it's good to kind of look outside the box sometimes and not be so narrow-minded about they got to be this size and this weight and whatever arm length, But you do have to hold them accountable a little bit if they don't really fit the mold. I mean, the Tracy Walker thing last year was kind of weird, I mean, who knows? It's still the jury's still out on him, but it was kind of weird coming from a smaller school, 3rd round, like that kind of stuff. So was it 3rd round? 4th?
3rd round.
3rd round. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff where you still, even though they try to explain it, you need to sort of question these things a little bit, even if they have their, because think about it.
I agree.
Where has he left you? He's left you nowhere to go.
Well,
you can't. He's right, because if he picks the guy who's the prototype, hey, he picked the prototype. It makes sense. If he picks the guy who's not the prototype, well, that makes sense too, because he said he may not pick the prototype. Like he's correct in every facet. Then.
So you asked if I would kill them for not getting proper value. Well, look, it depends on who they take and who they pass on, right? And
True.
Again, we're talking of this from my point of view, right? If I like Ed Oliver as a prospect, a lot of the guys that I've talked to are like, yeah, man, he's a really good player. Ignore what happened last year, like on the sideline, ignore the numbers that he's put up. He's a really good player. The way you can use him, what he'll do. So if they pass on Ed Oliver and then they take a lesser player, I'm probably going to scratch my head a little bit about that, right?
Right.
If all these guys are off the board, let's say no quarterbacks go in the top 7 picks. Well, yeah, then they trade down. I'm like, you know what? It's good to get an extra 3rd round pick, because there's plenty of value just in numbers, right? Just in having that extra third round pick. And to me, if you take Christian Wilkins or DeAndre Baker or Noah Fant, or you throw a number of names out there, it's all the same. If you're taking them at 13 or 15 or wherever you're at, because that, to me, that's not a guy that, if you take him at 8, I'm kind of scratching my head like, really, you took Christian Wilkins at 8? You couldn't have moved down 4 spots and taken him there then and got the extra pick. So, we'll see.
It works in context of who they've taken, who else the other players are, where they're taking.
All right, so we were talking about the little hints that Bob dropped,
Yeah.
Taking you down every different alley. So you kind of, here's another one. He said, there's a lot of players in the draft, and sometimes you have to, think about the value, and maybe there's a guy that, in the second or third round or whatever. The question was asked about wide receivers and tight ends, and I think it was in that context. Do you, how high do you need to take them? And he said, well, there's a lot of guys in this draft where you have to consider where you're taking them to. And he said, especially on defense in this draft, there's some guys that you can get later. To me, that was something that maybe set up for, we pass on a defensive playmaker up top and we take the tight end, because tight end's a position that's going to get a lot of fans out there. I know I've written about him a lot, TJ Hawkinson, so I know a lot of fans out there don't like him. And when Bob said that, that was what sort of popped into my head, like, he's talking about getting another defensive lineman or a linebacker or somebody on day 2, and that player, compared to the first-round defensive lineman you could take, there's better value there than the tight end in round 3 that you would take compared to Hawkinson.
Yeah, you know what, and part of it also I've thought, is politically, right, is you have Darrell Bevell as your new offensive coordinator. You need to give him some weapons. So just going defense again or whatever it is, I mean, he needs a guy, you know, and maybe, we don't know, maybe his guy is, he's looking for the Jimmy Graham, right? So you got to give him a little bit of bullets in the chamber there to help, Stafford and the whole offense get off the ground. I think tight end's tough. I said before, it's a slow to develop position. It's a very difficult position. So first, for this year, I wouldn't expect a lot out of Hawkinson, but you can see that. And the Lions do have generally a good history of drafting defensive players all over the draft, so they don't miss as much, I think, on these guys.
Right. Sorry, as I'm talking through here, I just had a tight end number I wanted to share with everybody, and I don't know if I can find it quickly on my phone.
Eric, you on stats the last year?
No, we're talking about. So
he was a Pro Bowler, by the way, last year.
Was he?
Yeah.
Nobody ever said.
Oh, but we'll get back to that, by the way.
So people have always talked about the Darrell Bevell tight end usage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, he doesn't need another tight end. He doesn't throw to him a lot, anyways. Look, Jimmy Graham, 2017, Darrell Bevell's last year with the Seahawks, 96 targets. Wow. 96 targets. 2016, Jimmy Graham, 95 targets. Like, all right, I mean,
Russell
he's not
Wilson's
using the tight
accurate,
end like Travis Kelce,
right,
but he's getting a lot of targets. That's pretty good usage for an old Jimmy Graham. In 2014, when they didn't have a tight end, they didn't throw to the tight end a lot, right? Luke Wilson led him with 40 targets. So they didn't throw to him a lot when they didn't have a tight end. When he has a tight end, he uses it. So I just want to put that out there.
You weren't besmirching Luke Wilson's name, were you?
I love Luke Wilson, but
right,
I'm just saying he wasn't the pass catcher that Jimmy Graham was. One other thing, Croy Bierman. That's the guy you're thinking of.
Croy, yeah, yes.
Sorry, to the party. For the party.
It's a weird name, Croy Beer. I always wanted to call him Cody. Anyway.
All right, so we talked a little bit about who the draft pick is going to be the other day. This is the last time that I'm going to see you before the draft, thankfully. Wow. But before we part ways, it's heartbreaking as that sounds, I want to know who you think, and maybe it's the same guy you talked about the other day, who do you think is the best realistic bet for the Lions at number 8? And why?
Well, I spilled the beans a little bit on Channel 7. Yeah,
that's not airing until tomorrow.
No, it's not. Okay, so you heard it here first, I think. I'm going to say Alabama offensive lineman Jonah Williams.
Okay.
Right? Well, I think we mentioned this before. He fits the Bob Quinn mold, and obviously a lot of things have to, fall into place for him to be there at 8 and the right guy and all this stuff. But I think if Bob Quinn had his druthers, I think he'd like to have an offensive lineman. They need it. He's an SEC guy, versatile, Bob Quinn talked a lot about, position versatility on the offensive line today.
He loves his SEC players.
Players. Talked about Matt Light, and he wasn't an ideal size and all this stuff. And
they played him at left tackle. Everybody thought he couldn't. It sounded like Jonah. You're right. It did. It sounded like Jonah.
He moved around, and they like it. It's athleticism, hardworking, all this stuff, productive. I mean, it'd be hard to criticize him, especially if he's going to play right guard. It makes perfect sense for me. And it's a good safe bet. And at 8, I mean, he mentioned Hawkinson. I just don't think there's any way in the world that he takes Eric Ebron, the sequel. It's just too soon. So, what do you think?
Well, it's a good one. I don't want to tell you why you're wrong, but no, I think it's a good one because I do think Jonah Williams. He laid that case out without saying Jonah Williams today when he talked about Matt Light and how nobody thought he could play left tackle, and the Patriots did, and he played for 8 or 10 years, and it's kind of Jonah Williams. He's started ever since he got to Alabama, and everybody's talking about him as a right guard or right tackle or center, but maybe the Lions think he can do a little bit more. All right, but my pick, look, of the realistic people, I think Ed Oliver. Like, I haven't done my final mock draft yet, so I don't know if Ed Oliver is going to make it to them at 8. But if I had my druthers outside of that top 3, outside of the quarterbacks, I think Ed Oliver is the best fit for them because I think I think the Lions have longer term needs on the defensive line, and not that he's going to replace Snacks or Ashawn Robinson, different type player, different body type, obviously, but I think you can do a lot with him. You can play him at defensive end. You can play him at defensive tackle. Maybe you can stand him up. I think the Lions were one of the teams that thought about, or asked him or wanted to see if he could do some linebacker stuff. I think he's that versatile. He's that chess piece that Matt Patricia can use in his defense. Really good player. Didn't have a great season this past season because of the injury, but he's a clean prospect. Undersized, again, the case that Bob Quinn laid out, sort of so ahead of time. There's some undersized people there, but I think Ed Oliver's a really good player. I think if he's there at 8, I think he's the pick. I don't think the Lions trade out if he's there at 8. I'll probably end up giving them T.J. Hawkinson again in my mock draft because I don't know that I will have Ed Oliver going there because I do think he could go. There's so many teams that want defensive linemen. The Raiders, the Giants, even the Jaguars, I guess, could use him. I don't think the Jaguars go that direction, but the Bucks, Tampa Bay could use him. So he's probably going to be gone before 8, but there's a realistic chance that he's there, and if he's there, I think that's who the Lions go with.
So just let me ask you, politically, as I mentioned, you just spent whatever the God's fortune on Trey Flowers. You just paid the most ever for a slot cornerback, and now you're going to get Ed Oliver for the offense. You're going to tell Darrell Bell, hey, maybe next year we'll get you a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Noah Fant in the second round or something. Hopefully he falls that far. Or
no.
We'll find you someone off the
look,
trash heap somewhere in the 3rd round.
No, I think you're right, and that's why
good offensive skill players. I mean, they don't last until
you didn't give him
the
a
second,
skill
third
player.
round.
You gave him an offensive lineman.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, okay, offensive lineman. That's
I think you take a
premium
defensive
position.
lineman, and then guess what? I think there's going to be a wide receiver there in round 2 that they take. If that happens, if you take a defensive lineman early, I think there's enough. I think the sweet spot for a wide receiver in this draft is round 2. Like from some of the scouts that I talked to,
it's not a great draft for receivers.
No,
right?
Brown, Marquise Brown is a good player. A lot of people talk about DK. Look, I think there are some receivers that'll go in round 1, but I think there's a bunch that'll come off the board in round 2. So I could see them getting that piece for them then. But no, to your point, look, I just think Oliver is the type of game changer that Bob has talked about wanting to get. You go back to his first press conference after the season. He fits that mold. He can be a game changing, pass rusher, and you got a defensive minded head coach, even though you've added a bunch of.
Didn't you say that about Trey Flowers though? That he's a game changer and.
Yeah.
Paid him more than a quarterbacks get.
Yes, but this is the thing. Like Ed Oliver he's like Trey Flowers in a lot of ways. But you play 3 and 4 defensive linemen at a time, and you play 6 or 7 for the game. So I don't think having Trey Flowers, I don't think that precludes the Lions from taking Ed Oliver. I think those guys would be able to play together. I think they're versatile enough that they can do different things, and that if Matt's moving Trey inside and Ed outside and we saw it last year. And Ndamukong Suh and Aaron Donald, 2 defensive tackles, and they're playing end, and they're playing all over the place. So I think that's why he makes a ton of sense to me. If he's not there, Hawkinson is the guy that I think they would go with.
You're going to have you're going to have Trey Flowers, Ashawn Robinson, Deshaun Hand, Ed Oliver.
Snacks,
yeah. You're gonna have,
but look,
this is going to be. I mean,
are
they going to play? Are they going to? Yeah, like 15 defensive lines.
Hey, if you have one of the best defenses and defensive lines in the NFL, you're going to be a pretty good team. Yeah. But Damon Harrison wants a contract extension. Who knows if
that's true?
Probably not going to get it. Maybe this is his last year there. Ashawn Robinson, last year of his deal. Who knows if he comes back? probably better to invest in a young guy than to give Ashawn what he could get on the open market if he has another good year. Again, different types of players, so I realize it's not an exact match, but yeah, I think there's Deshaun Hand can fill that Ashawn Robinson role. Ed Oliver can play that left-endish sort of role. So yeah, I think. Yeah.
Even though you said that the draft's pretty deep on defense.
Again, I think for special players, you make special exceptions up top, and if that guy's not there, that's when they move down.
Yeah.
If they can.
And you see Oliver as a special player, like he
do.
can
I think
Pro
Ed
Bowler
Oliver
in
can
the
be
future.
a special player.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
fair.
T.J. Hawkinson is, I'm not a huge fan of the tight end up top, but just from talking to people, he does sound like he's a pretty unique tight end, and he would be worthy of that pick if some of those other guys you like aren't there. So I'm not
one of the best prospects in 10 years, right?
Yeah, at the tight end position.
Yeah.
So if you're taking that in the top 10, I realize to live up to that draft value, you got to put up some pretty big numbers. But for the Lions, I could see that as being a fit too.
You're really going to struggle to have to defend this pick. If they pick Hawkinson 8th overall, you're going to have a.
Well, look, this is. Do I think they would do it? Yeah. Again, if I'm making the pick, like.
Do you have a problem with it? You said you're not a fan of it, but you have.
Yeah, I understand it from the Lions standpoint because that's who they are. That's what they want to do. If he is as good as people think he is as a run blocker, and he can stretch the field, and he's what they want. Maybe the offense that I'm building, if I'm the GM, if I'm the coach, I don't rely as heavily on that position. I want to air it out a little bit more. I like the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs offense. I like what they do. I like what the Rams do, but that's not what the Lions are going to do. So, I think Hawkinson fits what they want to do.
Who's one of the best, you think, NFL tight ends who's a pass catcher but also a really good run blocker?
Well, Gronk was the guy for all the years.
Yeah.
I mean,
is he a really good? Pretty good run
Absolutely.
blocker. Okay.
Yeah.
That might have been underrated. I don't remember him.
No.
I remember going out there. Yeah, of like.
Gronk's also 25 pounds heavier than Hawkinson too, and Gronk's a unique guy. So.
They're uncommon. They're very uncommon.
They tried to trade for Gronk last year. They tried to sign Jimmy Graham last year. They tried to sign Trey Burton last year. I know they signed Jesse James this year, but
you need more. You need more at that position.
Tight ends. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. 1 week from today, we will see what the Lions do in the NFL draft. And as I told you guys the other day, Carlos will be here in Allen Park, Manning coverage here. I will be in Nashville, Tennessee, not on vacation, but enjoying Tennessee nonetheless.
Enjoying your Marriott points and the money on the bumps. Yeah, it'll be good. Life's good.
I will be.
What are you bringing me back?
I will be live
Music City.
from the
What are you
draft.
bringing me back?
A cough.
Don't say a hello from Joe Rexford. I don't want that. I want something of value.
That's not valuable?
No.
Joe Rexford. You hear what Carlos thinks of you
Sorry,
these days?
Joe. Sorry.
I will see Joe, and I will tell him hi from you.
That's good.
I'll bring you back, I don't know.
Bring back a Predators souvenir. They're the Nashville NHL team.
Yeah, all right. This guy likes hockey. Hockey and me just have never really mixed. I don't dislike it. I just don't really watch it.
You just don't think it's cool, that's all.
I've always been a basketball guy growing up. He was a hockey guy, so, I don't know. We have a little running joke about the hockey thing.
Well, it's funny. You grew up in Detroit. You're not a hockey guy. I grew up in L.A., and I'm not really a basketball guy.
Kings? Are the Kings playing? Your Kings? Your LA Kings? Are they still in the playoffs?
Oh, man.
I don't legitimately.
Wow.
I'm not trying to rub anything in
Wow. They finished they had one of their worst records in the league. And
really?
Yeah. And they actually got they didn't get a good draft.
Are they ahead of the Lions? The Lions. Wow, are they ahead of the Red Wings? Are they ahead of the Red Wings in the draft?
I think they have the 6th overall pick. I think they had the worst or second worst record, so they didn't do well. I think the Blackhawks have the first overall, but anyway, it was a terrible season.
Enough hockey talk.
Yeah, two
This is
Stanley
football
Cups
season.
in 3 years.
It's
I was
always
happy.
football season here on Facebook
In Hockey
Live
Town.
and Freak.com. It's always football season here, and the draft is coming up in less than a week. Well, by the time you see this, it'll be less than a week actually. So, all right, that'll do it for us here. My phone is ringing, and we got to get out of here. For Carlos Monarrez, I'm Dave Birkett, Freak.com.